Hello everyone. I'm going to quickly walk you through putting together an audition podcast. So I've chosen to do a podcast. You also have options to do interviews, tell a story, whatever it is that you'd like to do, but I'm going to do a little bit of a podcast. So to get started, here I am in Audition, but I actually have a step that I had to go through before I'm ready to go into Audition. Let's take a look at that. The first step is to gather all of your assets together. And an asset are basically sound files that are all going to go into my podcast. So I have a script that I put together for my narration, and my suggestion is if you're doing a podcast, to do it off of a script, but practice it a little bit so that as you're reading your script, you sound normal. I've also put together a set of loops. Now, you'll notice I have a bunch of loops, but I only have 2 of them marked in green. So I'm actually going to use 2 loops in my podcast because I wanted to start out with the Arise version of Poddington Bear and then go to Transient for the rest of my podcast. So I'm on a Mac, and on a Mac you can color flag a file. I'm not quite sure if you can do this on a PC or not, but just you might, once you've decided out of kind of all of the various loops that you looked at, which ones you like, you can throw away the others or just put them in a folder to put them on hold. I also have some sound effects, and you'll notice I have duplicates of each file. So I learned a while ago that if you go in and edit one of your files, it changes it on the drive. So if you screw it up, you want to make sure that you have a copy. And my last folder is my narration. I created my narration by going to File, New, Audio File. Then I use the record button to record my narration. Now you notice when I'm done, I have this kind of mass of a waveform. So if you want to expand this out a little bit, there's several ways to do it. One is to click down in the zoom in on the timeline. That will start to expand the waveform a little bit for you. You can also go up to this slider, which shows you where you are in your audio, and you can move that back and forth. I'm going to move that to the beginning and then move this end, which also starts to expand it out. And so I can start to see the individual words and phrases. So you'll be playing with this a lot. There's the zoom in, zoom out, or just going up and working with the slider bar to adjust your view of your audio. Now with my narration, there's a couple of things that I want to do. It's actually pretty clean. So I have my slider bar all the way over to the left so that I can see the silence that I put in at the beginning of my recording. To listen to the audio, I can click play or press the space bar, and I'll see that it's fairly clean. How do I know this? The levels bar is not moving. Still, this is the ambient noise that was in the room when I was recording.
Hello, and welcome to the next
and then we start with the recording. So to clean this up, I'm going to select a portion of that ambient sound. I'm then going to go up to Effects and select Noise Reduction and Restoration, and then capture the noise print. So what this does is it tells Audition, this is kind of the ambient background noise. And if you get anything outside of that in terms of ambient, put it back to this level. So I'll press Command A on the Mac, I believe it's Control A on the PC, to select my entire audio piece. And now I'm going to go up to Effects, Noise Reduction and Restoration, and choose Noise Reduction. I'll get this dialog box. I'm going to let it reduce it by what it thinks it should, and then click Apply. So I wait a few seconds, and it makes some adjustments to my audio. Listening to my audio, you'll notice that there are some peaks here that are fairly high.
For example,
and if I look at my levels, you'll see I'm going into the red a little bit more than I would like to. Now, it's okay if you go to the 0, but here I went over a little bit.
http://
So what I'd like to do is to reduce the sound level on my audio just a little bit. So again, I'm going to press Command A and then go up to Effects, Amplitude and Compression, and Amplify. I'll click the preview button.
Hello, and welcome to the next revolution in teaching and learning.
And start to adjust
Next
the audio.
between the physical and digital learning environment.
And again, I'm
Over
looking
the past 5
at
to 10
my
years, the evolution of digital tools has changed.
now
the way
I'm
we
looking
think about
at my
teaching and
levels bar
However, the space where this learning
and
takes
working to
place
get it
hasn't
within
changed for hundreds and
kind
perhaps
of the
thousands of
negative
years.
6 to negative 3
For
range,
example, there is a great picture on
so
the
that if
internet
it goes
that
over
shows a
that,
class from the 1400s
I won't go over
that
the
could be
0
a lecture
mark.
hall today. Take a look at it at bit.ly.
Let me stop that and apply. And you'll notice that my waves are now no longer peaking out at various levels. I no longer need these 10 seconds, so I'm going to select those and just press delete. And that's an easy way to trim the beginning and ending of a clip. So I'm now going to save this. And this is why, remember, I made a copy of it. If I now have to go back to my original, I can go back to that copy. To put my podcast together, I'm now going to create a multi-track session. I'll go to File, New, Multi-track Session. It's going to ask me what I want to call it. So I'll type in the name. I already have it saving to the Audition folder where all of my assets are. You might want to make sure that you've set this before you save so that all of your assets are in one place. I'll click OK, and here's the components of my podcast. Now I'm going to import the individual pieces that I need. I'll go to File, Import, and File, and get my narration. So Audition has now added my narration to my list of assets. I'll go back. Get my loops. I'll click on one and then Command click on the other. And this selects the two assets. So now I can open those and it adds Arise and Transient. Last thing I need is my sound effects. Back to File and Import. Could also press Command I or Control I. Go for my sound effects. I'm going to use the Foley door, large room. I'll select that. And then I want to make sure I get the right high school hallway ambience. So I have those two selected and I'll open those. So now I have all of my assets loaded into Audition. Now I'll build my podcast. The first thing is I'll start out with my intro music. I'm going to put Poddington Bear Arise in the first channel. And again, it kind of expands things out. So I want to look at this a little bit more closely. I'm going to squeeze it back a little bit because I really only want the first 5 or so seconds. So I'll play this. So I want it to fade out when I get to about 6 seconds. What I need to do now is to trim my clip. So I'm going to expand that back out and go to the right-hand side of my audio clip. I can now drag to the left, and that will shorten that clip. Zoom back in on it. Now I can use the fade out handle, I think is what they called it. And you'll notice if I hold down the Alt key when I do this, I do something called a symmetric fade. Command will do, it changes the fade shape, and Shift key to fix either fade duration or shape. And if you read through the D2L website, there's an explanation of what these all are. I'm just going to drag this over. And I think I want to fade this down a little bit. Remember, I wanted to go for around 6 seconds. So now if I listen to my music, I hear it fade out. And you can play with the fade out to adjust this to whatever you'd like. Now I'm going to drag in my narration. And I'm holding down the mouse key while I slide this back and forth to adjust where I want my narration to come in. Go ahead and play it just to see.
Hello, and welcome to the next revolution in teaching and learning.
Okay, I think I want to move that over just a little bit more because my hello is overshadowed by the audio.
Hello, and welcome to the next revolution in teaching and learning. The nexus between the physical and digital learning environment.
Okay, so that's my first audio. And I wanted to have no background music while I was doing the introduction. Now I'm going to bring in my other background music and place it here. And in this instance, I want the music to fade in. So I'm going to drag the fade in, adjust this a little bit, and play it.
Over the past 5 to 10 years, the evolution of digital tools has changed the way that we think about teaching and learning. However, the space where this
So here I have my background music playing underneath my audio, but it's a little loud. So I'm going to stop this and adjust the audio. And the easiest way to do this is just to play with the volume in track 3, which is where this transient audio is. So I'm going to slide that back a little bit. And the nice thing is I can be playing this while doing that.
Picture on the internet that shows a class from the 1400s that could be a lecture hall today. Take a look at it at bit.
So I can work and adjust the audio. I'm going to leave it at negative 8.4.
http://bit.
So there's my narration and my background music. The next thing I need to do is to put in my sound effects. So here's where I want to put my sound effects. I have a door opening and then students wandering down the hall. One thing I want to point out is you'll notice that my background music stopped here. And actually I'm going to trim it back just a little bit. And for me, that's okay. Because listening to the audio, it sounded good to have this fade out a little bit before I put in my sound effects. So here's the statement.
The bell rings. Doors open.
So right after the doors open, I want to have a door open. And I've got a sound effect for that. I'll drag it out and put it into track 4. Now I get a warning because the sample rate is different, and that's fine. I'll just click OK. Go ahead and play this.
Doors open, and the workers, kids, pile out of them.
And right when I say pile out, I want some hallway sound effects. Now, one of the things I have to be careful of is you'll notice I have 2 high school sound effects here. I took this out of a YouTube, so it actually gave me a video file as well as the audio file. So I got to make sure that I select the audio file and bring it down here. And this is a fairly long piece of students walking through the hallway. And just in fooling with this, I decided I really want to start about here.
Fortunately, universities.
So the first thing I need to do is to trim the beginning of this piece down and get it back to where I want my audio to start. Something that will help here is to expand this out a little bit. So I'll trim down to there, bring my audio back, and zoom in again. So let's see where I have things.
The bell rings, doors open, and the workers, kids, pile out of one widget box, walk down the conveyor belt, the hallway, and enter the next widget box.
And here's where I want that sound effect to fade out. So again, I'll expand out, trim it a little bit, expand back, and use the fade out to fade out my ambient sound. At this point, I'd like to bring back my background music. So I'm going to pull transient out and put it into track 3. And you can make decisions as to whether you have multiple sounds and tracks or if you do different tracks for each thing. Again, the intro is a little long, so I'm going to trim that up. Pull this back down. You notice I almost accidentally put it into track 2, but that's okay. I didn't let go of the mouse. And I'll fade the music in. Now I just have to go and make sure that the music plays throughout the entire podcast, which it doesn't. So I'm going to come down here, trim it back a little bit to where it fades out, put transient in, trim it up so there's not too much silence between, and start it all over again. Now there are instructions on how to loop an audio in the D2L site, and I just do it the old-fashioned way, where I come in and I just keep on placing it in. So here I see that my transient music fades out just as I'm finishing talking. So let's take a listen at that.
How do you join this next revolution? Simple. Take a look at your space and say, I can change this.
So that's going to be my ending. And I can decide if I want to put what's called a bumper. So I might go back and use another 10 seconds of my Arise music to indicate that the podcast is over. So I will go ahead and do that. Going to expand out, because I remember that's a rather long clip. Bring that back. Zoom in again. Slide over to where that piece is and decide I want to fade it out right there. So I'll take my fader bar, trim this down a little bit. So my ending now sounds like this.
Space PLN adds K12 spaces to flex space. So, how do you join this next revolution? Simple. Take a look at your space and say, I can change this.
So here I am with my podcast, and I'm ready to export it. But there's one step I want to do before I do that, and that's to add metadata tags to my podcast so it could be searchable. It's actually fairly simple. Go to Window, Metadata, and you'll see this box appear. You'll want to click on the ID3. So you want to put in the title and your name as the artist at a minimum. So here I've typed in my information. I can close this by going to Window and selecting Metadata again, or just Command P or Control P. That will close that, and here's my podcast ready to export. Now my final step is to export the project as an MP3. Go ahead and just hit Save, just to make sure I've got everything saved. Then I'll go to File and Export. Select Multi-Track Mixdown and the entire session. If I had anything selected, it will ask me if I wanted to do the selected clips, but I want the entire session. I'll get a dialog box. I'm going to export this as an MP3 audio file. Now it's going to the desktop, so I want to make sure it goes into my Assets folder. So I'll click and find that. So I'll do the next revolution mixdown.mp3. If I don't want the word mixdown on that, I can just delete that here and then click Save. So now I've got it going into the right folder. It's the right format. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And that's it. I have my podcast. Here it is as an MP3. I'll include this on the website so that you guys can listen to it. Looking forward to see what you come up with.